What is going on, YouTube? It is Unger to the Max here, and we are back with another vlog. And this is a vlog I wasn't expecting to make because I thought Myles Garrett would be traded. I thought he was going to be either a Philadelphia Eagle, a Detroit Lion, a Washington Commander. I did not expect him to be back with the Cleveland Browns. However, him and the Browns agreed on a 4-year contract extension that'll keep him here in Cleveland through 2030, and he gets $123 million fully guaranteed, and the contract extension averages about $40 million a year. So, how do I feel about this? Well, I'll put it simply like this. Myles Garrett is turning into the defensive version of Joe Thomas. What do I mean by that? Well, let me put it like this. Did Joe Thomas end up getting his jersey retired by the Cleveland Browns? Yes. Did he end up in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio? Yes. But did Joe Thomas ever play in the AFC Championship game? No. Did he ever play in the Super Bowl, let alone win a Lombardi? No. And how many different quarterbacks did he play for? How many different head coaches did he play for? Myles Garrett is going through the exact same thing. I fully expect that when Myles retires, he will get his jersey retired by the Cleveland Browns. He will end up in Canton, Ohio at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. However, he will not play in an AFC Championship game. He will not play in a Super Bowl, let alone win a Super Bowl. But hey, he's going to play in a new stadium. Hooray! But I don't get it with Myles Garrett because he requested a trade recently, and in that trade request, he was saying, I'm grateful for my 8 years here in Cleveland, but when I came to the NFL, it wasn't about the money. It was about winning and getting to a Super Bowl, winning a Super Bowl. And yet he comes back and signs this amazing contract extension with the Cleveland Browns. I don't get it. I really and truly don't. Like I said, I believe Myles Garrett is becoming the defensive version of Joe Thomas, which Joe Thomas had an amazing career, played his entire tenure with the Cleveland Browns, got his jersey retired, went to the Football Hall of Fame. But did he play in any playoff games? No. That's where Myles Garrett has a leg up on him, because Myles Garrett was part of the Browns team that went into Pittsburgh and beat the Steelers in the wild card round. Then they went to Kansas City and should have beaten the Chiefs. That was a targeting call. The touchback rule is completely pathetic, and the NFL needs to get rid of it. And I hate the Chiefs, partially because of that, also because of their voodoo magic. Although that didn't work in the Super Bowl. I don't care what the final score was. That was a total beatdown. The Eagles completely dismantled them from start to finish. But, and then we went to the playoffs a couple years ago where we got absolutely whooped by the Houston Texans. But think about this. We had something going with Baker Mayfield as our starting quarterback. And who stepped in and ruined all that? It was the owners, Jimmy and Dee Haslam. Ever since they have taken over, this team has been a complete and total disaster. We've had, I'm trying to think. We've had Kevin Stefanski, Hugh Jackson, Freddie Kitchens, Mike Pettin, Rob Chudzinski, just to name a few. Those have just been our starting quarterbacks. We've had Brian Hoyer, Johnny Manziel, Robert Griffin III, Deshaun Watson, Baker Mayfield. That's just a handful of the different starting quarterbacks we've had. And now the Haslams want us to get behind the idea of a new dome stadium in Brook Park. Why? The only reason I'm in support of it is because I would love for the men's Final Four to come to Cleveland. Because I went to the national championship for the women's Final Four when it was here in Cleveland last year, and it was amazing. One of the best atmospheres I've ever been part of. So, if we build a new dome stadium and the men's Final Four were to come to Cleveland, I would totally go. But to get back to my original point, which I'm not wavering from, Myles Garrett is becoming the defensive version of Joe Thomas. Now, I get it. Only a handful of players go on to ever play in the playoffs, let alone the Super Bowl. For that matter, even win a Super Bowl. I get it. Trust me, I do. But think about what Myles Garrett has done for the Cleveland Browns. He's won Defensive Player of the Year at least twice, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's at least twice. Like, you have to account for him when you play the Browns. At least on paper you do. He doesn't always show up, but he's the main guy you have to worry about. He's been more effective when we've had guys like Zadarius Smith and Jadeveon Clowney across from him, and yet for some reason the Browns traded Zadarius Smith, and they didn't re-sign Jadeveon Clowney. And I just don't get it. So, again, Myles Garrett is becoming the defensive version of Joe Thomas. And if that's how he wants his career to go, fair enough. I get it. But he almost sounds hypocritical because of what he was saying a couple weeks ago of, I want to be traded. I want to go to a team where I can put myself in a position to win a Super Bowl like the Philadelphia Eagles. Shout out to Brandon Lewis. I know you're still on a high from winning the Super Bowl a few weeks ago. I get it. The Eagles have lost a lot defensively. But guess what? Jeffrey Lurie is not going to just say, oh, Howie Roseman, we've lost all these defensive players. Be gone. No. Because Howie Roseman has proven that he knows what he's doing. Like, they gave Carson Wentz a contract extension. And what did they end up doing? They still drafted Jalen Hurts. I think that ended up working out pretty well for the Eagles. Let's see, what else? Oh, yeah. They traded for A.J. Brown, drafted Devontae Smith, who I think should have been Super Bowl MVP. That's no slight towards Jalen Hurts, but I thought Devontae had one of the biggest plays with that bomb for the touchdown. They go out and add all these defensive players from Georgia. You might as well call the Eagles defense the Georgia Bulldogs 2.0, or better yet, the Philadelphia Bulldogs for that matter. But, Jeffrey Lurie, the owner of the Eagles, has basically stayed out of the way, let Howie Roseman do his job, and it's worked for the Eagles. I'm trying to think. Who could learn from that? Oh, I know. Jimmy and D Haslam. Because Jimmy Haslam is basically the AFC equivalent of Jerry Jones. No, I did not stutter, and no, I did not skip a beat on that. I will say it again. Jimmy Haslam, the owner of the Cleveland Browns, is basically the AFC version of Jerry Jones. Now, is Jimmy Haslam as vocal as Jerry Jones? No, Jimmy is not as media-centric, because you see Jerry in front of the camera all the time and saying stuff on the mic and all this and that. I get it. But Jimmy Haslam and Jerry Jones are both very hands-on with their teams, the Dallas Cowboys and the Cleveland Browns. And you look at the Cowboys, they haven't been to an NFC Championship let alone the Super Bowl, since the late 90s. You know the last time the Cleveland Browns went to the AFC Championship? The late 90s. Because you had the drive, the fumble. It's why Browns fans hate the Denver Broncos. But have the Cleveland Browns ever been to a Super Bowl? Nope. Their last championship was in 1964. That's pathetic. The Cleveland Browns are one of 2 teams to go 0-16. 0-16. It's embarrassing. Honestly, I'm considering not going to as many home games as I usually do for the Cleveland Browns this season. As of right now, my plan is to go to the home games against the Green Bay Packers, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Buffalo Bills. And maybe the San Francisco 49ers, if that ends up not being the London game. So I'm hoping that the games against the Packers, Vikings, Bills, and 49ers are all here in Cleveland. Because those are the games I really want to go to. Pittsburgh, seen them. Baltimore, seen them. Cincinnati, seen them. Miami, don't really care. Tennessee, whatever. But Green Bay, I really want to see the Packers. Minnesota, really want to see the Vikings. It's always fun when we play the Bills. So, I want to go to that game. And San Francisco, the last time the 49ers came here, we won. Which I was very surprised about because I thought we were just going to get smashed by the 49ers. But it wasn't Deshaun Watson that was our starting quarterback in that game. I think it was P.J. Walker. And, yep, I believe it was P.J. Walker. And on the note of quarterbacks, the Browns are meeting with Russell Wilson. I don't know. Because I still believe that despite everything that happened with Johnny Manziel in 2014, the Cleveland Browns are going to draft Shedeur Sanders with the number 2 overall pick. I believe Tennessee is going to go quarterback, number 1, Cam Ward, out of Miami. The Browns are going to go Shedeur at number 2. And then I don't know what's going to happen with the Giants at number 3, or the Jets at number 6, or the Raiders at number 7. And I get it. I've heard mixed reviews about Shedeur. I've heard some people say he's more of a second-round type quarterback. But when you're a quarterback-needy team like the Cleveland Browns, you have to do it. And I think Shedeur would fit Stefanski's offense more than Cam Ward because Shedeur is, yes, he's an athletic quarterback, but he's not quite as mobile, I would say. Cam Ward is more willing to run. I saw Miami do a lot of designed quarterback runs for him. I didn't really see that a lot with Colorado and Shedeur last year. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just my observation. And it's just pathetic that another name is going to be added to this long list of starting quarterbacks for the Browns. Whether, again, it's Brian Hoyer, Deshaun Watson, Baker Mayfield, P.J. Walker, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Johnny Manziel. I think Brandon Weeden was our quarterback with the Haslams under ownership. So it's just sad. And again, to get back to my original point, Myles Garrett is becoming the defensive version of Joe Thomas. And I wish there was some way we could get the Haslams to sell the team because they are running this franchise into the ground.